It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My first guest this week is a genuine rock and roll legend, Kim Deal. Born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, she started in music playing guitar with her sister Kelly. But unlike a lot of kids with guitars that age, she never really had a real band. They never played shows. They didn't tour. In the mid-'80s, she got married, she moved to Boston, and she replied to a classified ad looking for a bassist. Before long, that classified ad turned into a band, the Pixies. They were a band that, no exaggeration, changed the course of rock. Later, when the Pixies were on hiatus, Kim started to record her own music again. She restarted the Breeders in 1989, and the band put out Pod, their first record, in 1990.
I wait for you in heaven on this perfect string of love and drink your...
In the 28 years that have passed since, the Breeders have broken up and reformed quite a few times. They've toured extensively but sporadically. And through it all, Kim has had a knack for writing honest, sincere rock songs. The Breeders' newest album is called All Nerve. It's their first in 10 years, and it drops March 2nd. Let's take a listen to the first single from the album. It's called Wait in the Car.
Good morning!
Kim Deal, welcome to Bullseye. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Kim, you grew up in and still live in Dayton, Ohio, or at least the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio. Did you like it when you were a kid?
Did I like Dayton, Ohio when I was a kid? Yes, I did. Yeah, it would flood. I grew up on Huber Heights, and there was a lot of kids around. It was the 60s. There was a lot of neighborhoods. There were new houses, new suburb buildings. It wasn't super fancy, super middle class. And when it rained, the bottom of the streets would flood, and we'd all get out there and walk around in the water, the sewer water, which seemed like a great, fun thing to do. And now I just go gross. But I enjoyed it. Yeah.
You survived cholera, though, so that's good.
Yeah.
Did you still feel that way when you were like a teenager or an adolescent, or were you scheming on how to do something, how to make it in show business or whatever?
Let's see. Where are you from anyway?
San Francisco.
Oh, were you born and raised in San Fran?
Yeah.
See, it's hard to describe to somebody who's born in a city. Okay, when you're in the city, there's a visualization of people who are in all sorts of industries, and whether the family knows anybody in the industry or not, it's there and it's around. Like, there might be a casting call for a movie or a shoot, a film set being shot down the street. So it's always in the area, and so in Huber Heights, the ideal of showbiz, I think for most people would be high school musicals. I mean, I remember going to Boston when, checking out the clubs there and realizing that you were expected to play originals. Where in Dayton, Ohio, there's an expectation in the small bars there to play 3 sets at least, maybe 4 sets, and it would be mostly covers because that's what people wanted to hear, what was on the radio. And if your band did do it original, everybody knew it was probably the worst song in the set. I mean, I wasn't in any of those bands, but that's just because I wasn't in a band in Ohio. But there wouldn't even be an idea of a band doing an all-original set.
But you were playing with your sister, like you were aspiring to make music and even doing it professionally when you were a teenager, right?
I guess, we were doing it professionally. What is professionally?
I think that's where you get paid. I don't think you guys were supporting yourself making music, but you were like playing out with a band at some point, right?
No, never played out with the band in Dayton. Never. Good Lord, no. I would play acoustic, and me and Kelly, we would start it out, just playing acoustic and singing together and loving music, and then, our parents, friends, were getting remarried, and they asked us to play at the wedding. And back in the day, the songs to learn at the wedding, we were, we were still in high school. We would be doing Annie's Song by John Denver, and there's a song called The Wedding Song, and The Rose. We would do that song. And so there was always a little fistful of songs you would do at the wedding. And we did quite a few weddings. And then there were the ground round. Do you remember ground round where you could eat the peanuts and you throw them on the floor?
I don't, but that sounds great.
And then you do 4 sets, and we would do some original songs, and people would come up and say, "What's that song?" And that would be they would like that song, and that was good.
When did you get the idea that there was, another kind of rock music in addition to that, and how did you figure that out?
It was hard because in Huber Heights, it's not like now with the internet when we're lucky enough to have it. It's different because there was no fanzine, and there was no college stations. The college stations thing started in the early 80s that I know of. And I only found out about the college stations when I moved to Boston. I didn't even know about it in Dayton. My sister knew somebody who was going to school on the coast, and he would bring back these mixed tapes of James Blood Ulmer, the Undertones, Costello. And so that's how I found out about some of those bands. And then I went to Ohio State University for like a semester, and I saw the Talking Heads. So probably college, I guess, finally getting out or knowing somebody who wasn't when we get to that college age, which is a great reason to go to college right there, just to, if you're from a small town especially,
One of the things that I am struck by about you and your career is that as much as, like, for lack of a better word, rocking out was tied up in these, cultural ideas about sort of absurd masculinity, whether it's Led Zeppelin or Van Halen in tights, whatever it is. And when New Wave came in and was another option, it was often very beautiful or electronic. And you chose to continue to rock out. Like the fact that that horizon opened before you when you saw the Talking Heads didn't mean that you abandoned the ideal of wailing on a guitar,
Right. I did like Led Zeppelin a lot and Black Sabbath a lot.
I like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath too. They're great. They're awesome.
Right. Yeah, I just like guitars, maybe because I grew up with the guitars being, so prevalent, and I still like guitars. There's a lot of, being from Southern Ohio, and my parents are from West Virginia, so there's a lot of the Appalachian culture that was around, and there's a lot of guitar playing in that, and there's a lot of women guitar playing in Appalachian culture. So there was never in my mind an idea that, a woman playing guitar, that's odd. It's like, of course the woman is playing guitar because that's what, bluegrass and being in the hillbillies that my mom and dad grew up. They were from the hollers in West Virginia. So that's what, families played music. It was, so the ideal of a female playing a guitar wouldn't even be looked at as weird.
Well, I want to play a Pixies song, but I want you to tell me first how you ended up in the band.
I had married somebody who was working as he was a transplant from Boston.
He was like a contract worker at the Air Force Base who was working a limited time where you were living.
Exactly. And they called him something I forgot, begins with the T. Anyway, yeah, and my brother introduced us, and we got married, and it was time for him to go back to Boston, and I went with them. And I was just there for we were married for less than a year before we moved back there. And then I was in Boston for a week. And I did what I've done before. When I was in L.A., I did this too. Some people might not know, back in the day, you could kind of go to the back of these city weekly papers and you can look at the personal ads, A lot of them are, hey, starting a band, musician wanted. And they were kind of fun to read because they were ridiculous, musician wanted, pro attitude only, must have van, serious, we're here to do it for real, something like that, every night available, just a lot of real serious, no sense of humor, people wanting music. I saw one in LA that was for a certain 22 to 24-year-old singer for heavy metal, rock and music, for originals. Must have blonde hair, must be between shoulder length and middle of back. I'm just like, wow, this is so crazy. And then the one I read in the Phoenix was something about looking for somebody to play with, to do songs a la Peter, Paul, and Mary and Husker Du. No chops. It's like I didn't really think. I mean, it wasn't a band. They weren't a band, but it was a couple of people, and it's like, I would like to. It's like one of those things where you think, well, what a relief. That seems cool to me anyway. And I was the only ad I've ever answered, and I was the only person who answered their ad. So I called them up, and then I went to their house, and we hung out, and then we just started hanging out constantly.
Let's listen to Gigantic by the Pixies with my guest Kim Deal singing lead vocals. And it's a song that she wrote as well.
And this I know, his teeth as white as snow. What a gas it was to see him walk her every day into a shady place. With her lips she said, hey, pa, let's have a ball. Hey, pa, let's have a ball. Hey, pa, let's have a ball. Gigantic, my big love. Gigantic.
Did you have a feeling like, yes, we're revolutionizing rock music? Or were you not aware of it at the time?
Yeah, no. I remember doing that, and I remember after the first take of me, I came back in and listened to it, and I was saying completely out of tune. Because you got to get used to the fact that when you're on a mic and you're wearing headphones and you're listening to pitch your vocal onto top of music, it's a totally different thing than singing out loud in a room. So you have to figure out, where's my pitch at? Is it off of one headphone? Is it off of two? How do I find it? And but it was funny, when I came into the room, it always reminded me of this, the Partridge Family episode where David Cassidy thinks a girl is Keith Partridge thinks the girl is cute, and she goes up on stage and she sings out of tune, and the people are clapping so loud that nobody knows that she's singing out of tune. Anyway, when I came back in after singing Gigantic out of tune, Steve Albini was just, yeah, it sounds good. And I listened to it, it's like, oh, holy crap, I have to do it again. I don't think he notices when things are out of tune, though. It just reminds me of that for some reason. And we thought it was funny that Steve was getting these snippets of tape and putting them in between our songs, skit-like almost, Mm-hmm. And I hadn't heard a lot of people do that before.
I've read him basically be embarrassed about having done that. That
he is,
felt
isn't
like
he?
That he was trying to. He was doing something that didn't belong to the band and wasn't his place to do.
when he was playing it, we loved it. I don't know why he thinks that right now. Maybe he has rethought his philosophy of how invisible his production skills he wants to be. Maybe, he's rethought that, and it lands on a different side now. But at the time, we thought it was cool, and we thought we sounded cool, and we thought we were funny. Maybe he thinks it was a step too far.
Were you surprised, Kim, when your project started on a touring break from the Pixies, the Breeders, became a smash hit band? I mean, in a way that the Pixies even had never been, as much as you were a successful working band. When I was 13, I watched you on MTV, Was that surprising to you at the time?
I think surprising, I don't know if that's the word as much as it is unintended. Mm-hmm. I mean, the break from the Pixies then was kind of, you could tell like that we probably weren't going to get back together. That's what I was thinking anyway. And then it does go slowly. Like the song that got on the radio, Cannoball, I'm using my brother's harmonica microphone because that's like the Fogelberg, Loggins and Messina in there. And of course, my brother has a harmonica microphone. And of course, as a sister, you want to plug it into the Marshall and you want to start going, chuck, 1, 2, because that's fun. That's what you do to your brother's harmonica microphone. So, I mean, and starting out with the feedback and the squeals and stuff, it's certainly nothing that one thinks, okay, now we got the top of the song ready for a smash radio hit, or something. So it was certainly unintended that, I really liked it. Why? Nobody thinks it's going to be on the radio or anything. That would be weird.
Let's hear a little bit of it. That's like one of those songs that when I got my first CD player, it was one of my first CDs. And it was, you could, like the magic power of a CD player to somebody who had listened only to cassettes is that you could put a song on repeat. I think I probably listened to that song, 20 times in a row often, sitting in my basement room at my dad's house.
Yeah.
And it
That's
like
cool.
It was really cool, and you were and are very cool. But like that must have transformed your life in a lot of unintended ways to be in a hit-making rock band rather than a taste-making rock band.
It was cool. I'll tell you one thing that was different about it. I was in a bar and regular bar. And this had never happened with the Pixies. And there was a dance floor in the bar, and there was a DJ, and the DJ played Cannonball, and people rushed to the floor. And it was the first time that I had ever been in a band where people actually danced to the song, any song that the band had ever done. It was like, oh my God, people are dancing to this. It's crazy. It was really exciting. I rushed out there just so I could stand there while people were dancing to the song.
What was it like to get the band back together for the Breeders more recently?
We were sitting on the couch, Kelly's couch, in like '02. It was the spring, summer, and Kelly said, do you know next year is 2013? She said, do you know that's 20 years for Last Splash? We should call Jim and Josephine and see if they want to do some shows. And I thought maybe Jim McPherson was mad at me because we had played with the amps and he had left my house in a huff and I hadn't spoken to him since. So I said, I'll text Josephine. You text Jim McPherson. And so I texted Josephine, and she said, I'd love to. And Jim said, I'd love to. And then we started getting together, and we told, 4AD found out about it, and 4AD was like, what about a box set? And it's like, we have all these singles that people, whenever they released a single back in the day, they would put like 3 songs on it, and it's quite a nice release. And a lot of those are import only, so we put all of those in the box set. And so there was that, and so it lasted. We really enjoyed doing it. The same sort of thing. People couldn't wait. They knew what song's coming next. And I loved the album, so, and it was fun. And it's great playing with Jim and Josephine.
You were a really serious drinker through much of the early years of the Breeders. Was part of the experience of doing it now more recently the difference between doing it when you were... I read you describing drinking so much that you would black out in the middle of sets and sort of come back a song later. Was part of the experience the difference of, playing to a packed club clear-eyed?
Well, what you're saying isn't exactly true.
Okay.
I don't mind you saying it at all, but it's not exactly true. I never played drunk and stoned. I just couldn't do it. You can't play drunk and you can't play stoned. So through all the Pixies and through all the Breeders, never did it. Then the Amps started. That's a whole other band. And then I started drinking, and there was only a couple of shows. One was in Austin. There's only one that I remember. It was in Austin. And I was drinking a lot then. But it wasn't a lot of... I didn't spend my life doing that. I don't typically... it wasn't something I did, typically. Otherwise, I would say it. But I was drinking, but, afterwards and stuff, Right. So, and sorry, what was the question?
Well, how's the experience different, irrespective of the drinking or the pot smoking?
From playing?
20 years ago, 25 years ago.
The PAs are really good nowadays. The PAs, they've done fantastic technology. It's really amazing. And there's a lot of difference in sound, the musical style. So there is some trouble with bass bins, I think, the sub bins. People really love to open those up. And, there just is no subwoofer in Beatles. There's no subwoofer in most there's no subwoofer in Pixies and stuff like that. So sometimes the PA guy is going to want to do the DJ where they're opening up the big, huge subwoofer and going, and the song is do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and so it just doesn't work. So that's kind of a challenge. It can be if you don't have a good front of house, but we have a good front of house.
Kim, it sounds like you are fully ready to go solder some cables right now.
That is a big, huge difference, though. The PAs are fantastic. And there's not a lot of blowback anymore, so the whole sound system sounds a little different. It's like, wow, I need to actually hear this. It used to have so much blowback. It's like, that's a big deal.
Well, Kim Deal, thank you so much for taking all this time to come on Bullseye and talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it, too.
Kim Deal, ladies and gentlemen. The Breeders' new album, All Nerve, comes out March 2nd. They're launching a huge nationwide tour in April, too. We'll have a link to dates on the Bullseye page at MaximumFun.org. Let's take a listen to one last track off of All Nerve. This one is called Nervous Mary.
Madrid. Got away.